You've spoken to some players from the Pac-12. What are you hearing from them?
Cody Shear, who is an offensive lineman at Arizona State, told me yesterday that there are about 400 Pac-12 players on a group chat who are talking about all of this. And for Cody, he said two of the main priorities are racial injustice right now, and also for him, post-career medical insurance. He talked about a lot of injuries that he has had, that his uncle had while playing at Oregon, 10 concussions, and that's his focus. And then I talked to two players at UCLA, Greeny, Elisha Gidre and Tito Obonya, and they talked about how they hope this week to speak with Pac-12 athletic directors and hopefully Commissioner Larry Scott to voice a lot of their concerns. But for them, it's COVID-19 player safety that's at the top of the list. But they were talking to me about everything from name, image, and likeness to Black Lives Matter. There are so many issues going on right now that this opened a door for them to bring it to light. And they said, we want to spearhead the conversation, not just in the Pac-12, but nationally.
400 players. I mean, that's a significant number. Heather, what, if anything, have we heard from the administrators here, either from the schools or from the conference?
So there seems to be a disconnect there, I'll be perfectly honest. Now, Obonya told me yesterday that he does hope that they are meeting this week, but the Pac-12, a spokesman told me that they are sticking with their statement that they have not heard from anyone within this group, nor have their schools. So again, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but Obonya told me that he is expecting to talk to athletic directors. So the next step, to be quite honest, seems a little bit blurry, but they are hoping to gather support from other players across the country as well.
All right, Jay Williams, you played college athletics at the very highest level. When you hear Heather describe this story, what's your reaction?
Well, COVID-19 is expediting a process that has already been in place, and a lot of players have always, talked about, owning their voice and actually owning how they are represented on the field and the court. And Greeny, I made a post about this last year that caused a lot of disruption when I said, if you really want change, players, then you have to potentially talk about boycotting. And I said boycotting things like the Final Four, and this is another prime example. For the longest time, it's been free labor, essentially. And I think the players are now seeing all these conferences go to the extents that they're going to in order to have this season. Players are now recognizing that without them, there is no season. There is no revenue to generate. So when you hear guys like Larry Scott, who's the commissioner of the Pac-12, make an average salary of $5.7 million, and I know he dwindled that salary down to $470,000 due to the pandemic, he's still in the top upper echelon of commissioners being paid, and players are recognizing that with that, hey, let's start the negotiation process. Essentially what they're doing is, here's our term sheet, here's our demands, and now let's negotiate. And I love the fact that players are recognizing, let's come to middle ground. We may not get everything we ask for, but we have the opportunity to ask for it now because you need our services more than ever to keep these conferences afloat.
It's an interesting point. Heather, if I could come back to you quickly, who negotiates for them? We all understand who's on the other side. This is 400 players you're talking about. If they have 400 voices. They can have one voice in the Players Tribune, but if they do have a group of demands, who is it that actually goes in and meets with someone if there is a meeting to have?
Well, I think that a lot of it is the players. There's a group, it started with some former teammates who are at Oregon, offensive linemen, and Ramogi Huma is also a player, a former player, I should say, who helps speak on behalf of a national organization, and I'm sure that he would certainly help them as well. So they do have a broader national organization that is helping unite them, but at the end of the day, these are players who have to stand up for themselves, and they all told me yesterday, players are still afraid to speak up, and they're hoping that this starts to change that.
Tim Hasselbeck, what's your reaction to all of this?
Well, so my reaction to all this is that I think it's a great thing that the players are, thinking about things other than just being there for 4 years and kind of going about their business, trying to make conditions better for players, student athletes. I like that a lot. With that being said, the supply drastically, outpaces the demand for this. We can talk about 400 players. The reality is, I don't care if you're a star quarterback, there's another 5-star right behind you that is dying for you to sit out the season. That's the reality of the situation. And then when you look at some of the names that have come up, most of the people don't know these names. And so the idea that somehow would scare the Pac-12 away from just saying, look, if you don't want to play, yes, you can opt out. there's somebody that is behind you on the depth chart that's probably relieved that you're going to make that decision. A lot of these college rosters have 100 players on them. I mean, from a football perspective, much less some of these other sports. And so, I think when you look at that, it kind of minimizes your voice when you are, a left guard that nobody's heard of before that has a player that of similar ability that really would love to take your spot.
It's such a complicated issue. Jay, I'll give you the final word because, yes, there are very few individual players on the college level that move the meter in a meaningful enough way. You would literally need everyone. You would need enough of a walkout that you could basically say, you're not going to be able to play these games without all of us. I don't know how realistic that is. I share your idea that I like the fact that the players are recognizing that they have a position of some leverage and some power. They're exercising that. Jay, what's your final word?
Yeah, is it going to be challenging, Greeny? Yes, and I ultimately hear exactly what Tim is saying. And to go back to your last question, I think that was a brilliant question to be asked. And the fact that we have to ask that is interesting within itself. Who gets a chance to negotiate for the players? And are these demands a little bit, next level? Yes. It doesn't mean they can't be reeled back in to discuss what's the immediate future. And the fact that a lot of these players are being asked to sign limited liability waivers without representation, that's a big question within itself. That's a big problem. And that's something that we need to address. And that's what they're doing.
Meanwhile, Heather, let me come back to you because I know this is a very big and busy week around the sport for a variety of reasons. What are the things the fans should be keeping an eye on?
Two major things, Greeny. Tonight, Big 12 presidents are expected to be meeting and considering a 4 or 5 scheduling models for that conference. And then on Tuesday, the big one, the NCAA Board of Governors is meeting and will consider canceling fall championships, 22 NCAA sports, including FCS football. And I guarantee every Power 5 commissioner is going to have their eye on that.